had a job here. I found high school pretty easy. I graduated from medicine at the University of Toronto at the ripe old age of 22. Everything was going very well for me. As an impressionable young doctor, I quickly learned that I was very fortunate, but many other people, through no fault of their own, were not so fortunate. That we had many vulnerable individuals in our community, from the baby born with Down syndrome, from the elderly lady who was trying to stay home with multiple chronic conditions. I would try and do everything that I could for their health, but I realized that there was much more that they needed in terms of support, and I understood that government had a very important role to play in the lives of everyone to ensure that they were able to achieve their full potential. When I was the medical officer of health here in York Region, I had responsibility for public health, land ambulance, and long-term care, and I did what I could at the municipal level to ensure that the community lived in a healthy and safe fashion to the best that we could ensure at the municipal level. And then along came Mike Harris and the PC government. And all of a sudden, in the name of efficiencies, all the government services that I saw and cherished were being cut. And I never want to see that happen again in this province. Hospitals were closed, nurses and teachers were fired, and we have had 15 years as a government now to rebuild the precious infrastructure and the services that people need. And that's what I'm absolutely committed to do as the MPP for this particular area. I've listened to your concerns. I take them very seriously. I always take them back. We need to build this province up. Thank you, Alina. Paul?
Well, thank you so much, and thank you to the Chamber and the Markham Board of Trade for hosting the event, as well as to Eastridge for having us back here. I'll be short so that we get to the questions. Only to say that it was a tremendous honor of mine to be able to serve the community for 7 years in Ottawa. During that time, I was just extraordinarily excited and honored to be able to represent this community in a way that I think it needed to be represented and hadn't been for a very, very long time. I am a fierce advocate for this community. I've grown up here. My kids go to school here. I live just around the corner from here. All of the services that you use here are the same services that me and my family use. But I've noticed a lot of different things over the last little while as well. And I see it as we're knocking on the doors. We hear from people talking about how difficult it is to get the care that they need at our hospitals. They're talking about affordability. They're talking about hydro. I'm hearing the small business people talking about the struggles that they're having meeting bills or finding the appropriate people to work for them. So I think there's a lot that we need to do. I think you'll hear a lot of different opinions on how we get there tonight. I look forward to the debate tonight. And I will close just by saying this. I will be every bit as aggressive as I was federally in representing this community. I will make sure that we get what we deserve in this community, and I will always respect what you, the people, say.
Thank you. Kingsley, introduce yourself.
Good evening. Thank you, Eastridge Missionary Church. Thank you, Chamber of Commerce and Whitchurch Stouffville, and thank you, the Markham Board of Trade. I would like to start by acknowledging the Indigenous people whose traditional territory we have gathered on today. For thousands of years, this land has been the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe and the Huron-Wendat. We ask that we bring our hearts and minds together in our shared purpose and commit ourselves to the ongoing process of reconciliation and learning about our shared history. My name is Kingsley Kwok. Like an earlier speaker, I'm an immigrant too, so I want to acknowledge the traditional lands. I came to Canada when I was a teenager, and now I am a registered respiratory therapist, and I work at the Scarborough General Hospital. I'm also president of my local union of healthcare professionals there. And having worked a number of years, I have learned to go to bat for the community and for patients and for fellow workers. Because after 15 years, we have seen the cuts and the privatizing of this government, and we are still living through the consequences of the previous government, where that government actually closed hospitals. Anyway, I'm married. I have a 10-year-old son. He's somewhere in the audience. I don't want to point him out. So I understand the pressures of raising a young family. And I've also organized and advocated for transit improvements. And I know this is going to be a question later. I fought for equity in the workplace. And yes, I have campaigned for the $15 minimum wage.
Thank you, Kingsley. Jose?
Good evening. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Je suis enchanté d'être ici aujourd'hui. I want to welcome you all to what I hope is going to be a collegial debate, and I see it as a job interview. You are the people hiring. I'm actually, my name is Jose Echeverry. I'll be very happy to take your questions throughout the evening. And I wanted to tell you a little bit about me. I have 3 jobs. My most important job is towards my family. I'm a father of 3. Our eldest daughter was born in Markham Stouffville. Our other 2 kids were not so lucky, but don't tell them that. One of them was born in Vancouver, where I used to live for a few years. I want to tell you a little bit about my expertise in terms of this job that I'm applying here in Markham Stouffville. I actually came to this country from Chile. I'm Canadian by choice, like many of the folks here. I imagine in the audience as well. And I came with $40 in my pocket. And I was very fortunate to arrive in Canada when I was a young guy. I started working as a paint shop clerk to pay the bills. I went to Centennial College, and that means 30 seconds. Long story short, I was able to put myself through university, and I became a university professor. I'm a tenure university professor. That's my second job. And my third job is I'm also a business person, and now I'm running to the possibility of representing Markham Stouffville. I'm going to leave it at that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I want to thank our timekeeper very much, who's very effective. And I want to thank our candidates who are effectively following the timekeeper, I must say. We're going to get on to some of the questions now, and each candidate, just as a reminder, has 2 minutes to answer these questions. And these can be questions that certainly often will really need to be longer than 2 minutes, but that's what they have at the moment. Certainly, I'm sure they'd be happy to answer your questions at other times as well. First question, and Helena, we're going to start with you answering
We're
the question.
rotating, I believe, Pat.
Yes, we're going to start with you on this one.
Oh, okay.
Okay? With the questions. The recent Ontario government budget announced the harmonization with the federal government's eligibility criteria, leaving over 20,000 employers paying $100 million more in employment health tax over the next 3 years. In addition, businesses will be phased out of the small business deduction if they earn between $50,000 and $150,000 of passive investment income, resulting in additional $350 million in new taxes over the next 3 years. Can you explain why you support these new tax measures?
Well, thank you very much. And of course, we want our businesses to thrive. Businesses provide jobs, they stimulate our economy. Obviously, we want everything to go well with, especially small business in communities like Stouffville. And so the idea of harmonization with the federal initiative was because, of course, that would make it easier in terms of eligibility criteria. You wouldn't need to file twice. In terms of the employer health tax piece, what we found was with income sprinkling, there was actually what you would call a tax loophole. So some businesses could avoid paying their full share of employer health tax. So to compensate, knowing that many people in fact had used this perfectly legal loophole, but were now going to have to pay the appropriate amount of employer health tax, we lowered the corporate corporate income tax for small business from 4.5% to 3.5%, and we eliminated the capital tax. So this was a 22% reduction. Apart from that, of course, we've been lowering hydro bills. Businesses and residences now pay 25% less on their hydro bill, which is an advantage, of course, for a business. And we also initiated a Main Street Revitalization Fund that, in fact, the town of Stouffville took advantage of to ensure that our main streets remain vibrant and full of the small businesses that we need and want to have on our main streets. We've invested in infrastructure as well. I'm sure we'll have opportunities to talk more about that as we go on through the evening.
Thank you, Helena. Paul.
Sure. Well, look, our small businesses have struggled tremendously over the last couple of years. In particular, in the province of Ontario, we've seen increases in taxes. We've seen small business people being told that that by following the law that they're somehow not doing the right thing. We've seen a carbon tax put on them. We've seen their environmental levies increase in some businesses by 300%. We've seen their hydro bills go up over 150%. So in the last 2 years, our small businesses have come under attack in a way that they haven't come under attack by any government, at least in my memory. So no, a Conservative government obviously is not going to bring in place new taxes that will impact or hurt our businesses anymore. It's one thing to say that how important small businesses are and they're the engine of the economy, but when you're constantly attacking them, when you're constantly making it difficult for them to succeed, that's not supporting small business. So a Conservative government will stop doing that. We'll reduce the rate for our small, medium, and large job creators because it's the right thing to do. One of the things that we are forgetting that, we're not competing. Stouffville's not competing with just Toronto and neighboring municipalities. As a province, we're competing with Michigan. We're competing with New York. And if we're going to succeed, we have to give our small, medium, and large job creators the tools to succeed, and that doesn't mean punishing those who are successful. A Conservative government will stop doing that.
Thank you. Kingsley.
Thanks, Pat. Small businesses are the backbone of the Ontario economy. Yes, so I will be the cheerleader for small businesses in Stouffville or in Markham. I want to say that the Liberal government has made a lot of decisions that didn't really consult small businesses. And the guy who owns art decorating sticker store, his corporation is a big corporation. So when he promises corporate tax cuts, it really benefits big corporations. I don't know how they can trickle down to small businesses. The NDP will cut small business tax. We will maintain the small business tax rate at 3.5%, and though small businesses with payrolls below 1.5 million will still be eligible for the employer health tax exemption. If I still have time, I want to say that I want to recognize that just south of us, the city of Markham is marketing itself as the potential headquarters of Amazon too. I want to say that. Do you notice that the various levels of government came out, did not say that, we're going to give tax breaks to Amazon, an American company, or various benefits or all that. No, we just came out to say that Canada is great. We have a great healthcare system. We have an unemployment insurance system, and we can be competitive.
Thank you. Jose.
Thank you. As I mentioned to you earlier, I have a business, so I actually know what it means to be able to pay employees' salaries. And, at the end of the month, if you run a business, you know how difficult it is because the people become your family. The people you work with become your family. And it's very important to look after family. What I'm going to tell you is that I'm glad that everybody agrees about the importance of small, medium enterprise. What I want to tell you is what I would do for you if you happen to have a business. My friend had a coffee shop in Markham. I live in Markham, not in Stouffville. And she went bankrupt. And when she went bankrupt, she told me, the reason I'm going bankrupt is my rent is $5,000 a month. The electricity is ridiculous. The natural gas is ridiculous. I worked for 4 years for free, and I have to stop because I'm bankrupting my family. If I win your trust, what I'll do is I'll dedicate the constituency office that I'm allowed to rent as your representative using the funds from the Treasury. And that will be a center for social innovation. I know the people that make this happen in Toronto, and they're my friends. And what we'll do is we will nurture small, medium enterprise right here in Markham Stouffville. I'm going to leave it at that.
Thank you very much. One of the things that we're going to do is with the next question, Paul. We're going to start with you. Okay. The recent Ontario government budget announced a digital infrastructure investment of $500 million over the next 3 years to expand broadband connectivity and other technical features in rural and northern communities. Broadband services in this community are at best varied. Can you comment on the prospects, what the prospects would be for this region, including Stouffville, to benefit from the announced investment should you be elected?
Thank you. Well, look, I'm not going to criticize that investment. It's actually a very important investment. It's something that we did federally. I was a federal member of Parliament. We focused on the northern parts of Stouffville, that had no service in King Township. The importance of connecting our community we can't express it enough how important it is. It has an impact on house values in the northern parts of the riding. We want people to stay home and work from home, and if we're going to do that, we need to provide them the tools to be able to do that, and that includes high-speed internet. Local councillor for Stouffville, Ken Ferdinand, has done a remarkable job in helping give access to the northern part of the riding. So, listen, I applaud that decision. I think it is a good investment, but it is an example of where government can make a difference in communities, and I think we can only do better on that. So I do nothing critical to say about that, and I applaud the government for making a smart investment, at least in this instance.
Thank you. Kingsley.
Thanks, Pat. We all need data. Like now we have now we have a phone that's a computer, and now we want a computer, and now that computer phone to be a television or a VCR too to watch videos. But not only that, students still need to use the library, and a lot of people rely on the libraries to do their research, and the library needs that broadband data. This is of course, infrastructure itself is most important. Whitchurch Stouffville is growing and growing and growing, and so we need all kinds of infrastructure, be it healthcare, be it roads, and be it the services like sewage. But data and broadband is important, and I think now is the time for me to remind you, if you go to OntarioNDP.ca, the website, our party and my leader has released our party platform weeks in advance of the election being called, and if you go to Agriculture and Rural Affairs, you will find one of our promises is that we will create a 10-year, $1 billion fund to bring broadband service to rural and northern Ontario. I didn't make it up. It's one of my bullets here. And so I want to share that with you. Infrastructure is tremendously important. And my time is up.
Jose.
Thank you. Not to repeat what's been said, let's say something original. So all of you have a phone, or many of you, I see you with a phone on your hands. Problem is that the fees are ridiculous. I mean, it's ludicrous what we're paying for access to the internet. Thank you. And this has to change, you know. The way I look at it is there is too much corporate service by the political parties. We Greens are different. We're not in the pocket of corporations. We're not in the pockets of unions. We're independent-minded people. You want change? vote for a guy like me that will have your back. And what I do is I look at the best examples around the planet. And there is no better example than Denmark. Denmark, like Canada, like Ontario, like Markham Stouffville, people want to have the devices just like my children do. But the difference is there, all the politicians got together and say, you corporate folks are going to operate within a realm of reason. You're not going to have this free-for-all frenzy that it's allowed here in Canada, that they are allowed to do whatever the heck they want. And in Denmark, it is very inexpensive to access the internet. It's very inexpensive to phone anybody anywhere in the planet, because the Danish people understood something very basic, which is access to information. It's a human right. And they keep it like that. So if you elect me to be your representative in Parliament, we may not form government like my colleagues here, but I will be serving your needs, working with the municipal level, with the federal level, with the provincial level, to ensure we can be a reasonable country when it comes to broadband connectivity. And in terms of, to answer the specific question, how do you ensure that rural people, 30 seconds. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Helena.
Well, I think we're all agreed that broadband connectivity is absolutely vital for us in 2018. And, of course, we did have this investment of $500 million in this budget, building on an original $530 million budget for broadband since 2007. Paul made reference to the partnership between the federal, provincial, regional, and municipal government that we actually had in King Township. We partnered with ViaNet, a very successful project, because, in fact, public-private partnerships can work very well. And many residents in King Township now have much increased connectivity. One of the roles of an MPP, and this is what I've learned in the 10 years since I have been your representative, is that it's so important that the layers of government work together, and that all our stakeholders are aware of what is out there. So your question actually, Patty, related to how can Stouffville access this. This is extremely important, to work with the town of Whitchurch Stouffville, with the stakeholders at all times, to ensure that everyone's aware of what is out there and that we make it work. And this is exactly what I've been doing for the last 10 years, and obviously intend and hope to continue to do.
Thank you very much. Just a reminder, I do want to thank everybody that's still coming in, and our candidates have been so respectful of all our timekeeping. I'm very impressed. It goes to show what our candidates are like. I'm very impressed. Next question. In Kingsley, we're going to start with you, actually. The minimum wage rate is due to be increased again on January 1st, 2019 to $15 an hour. This follows a recent 14% increase effective January 1st, last January 1st. If you are elected, would you support delaying the increase for 1 year, or at least until an independent study is done to measure the impact that such an increase will have on the community and on the Ontario economy?
Thanks, Pat. No, in Ontario, here, no one who works full-time should live in poverty. Jobs nowadays don't last a lifetime like it used to be. More and more in this province and elsewhere, the jobs now are contract jobs. You're lucky if you get half a day of work, and then before you get sent home. Most of the time is, why don't you go home now? Those are the comments of a lot of the jobs out there. Freelance jobs are now called gigs to make it sound nice. The NDP supports the $15 minimum wage because there are a lot of people in this province that can't make ends meet and have to watch out for whether it's gas prices or rent or groceries, all three of which have gone up in prices. So does it not make sense that the wages should go slightly higher to catch up so that you can afford these things? And I realize I'm talking to members of the Chambers of Commerce and the Board of Trade, business owners and senior executives. I want to appeal to you. You would know what the levers of business of your business is. Wages is just one of them. If you make a lot of money, you give bonuses to your employees. If not, you adjust the bonuses. I noticed in the McDonald's, even the special value meals menu has gone up in prices now.
Okay, Kingsley, I'm going to stop you there. Thank you very much. Jose.
Thank you. I think the question merits some thought, because if you're earning $15 an hour, you cannot make ends meet in Markham, in Stouffville, or pretty much anywhere in Ontario. So we got a problem here that even increasing the minimum wage to higher levels, it won't make no difference for young people that want to have a home or for older people that want to retire. So I think what we have is a macro level problem here, which is a lot of people talk about this like a tip of an iceberg, but don't look at the bottom of the iceberg. And the bottom of the iceberg is this, that at the moment we have a taxation system in Ontario that punishes income. And what we should be doing instead is rewarding income and punishing pollution. That's what the cap and trade and carbon tax conversation that my colleagues should be having, it's all about. We have a system in place right now called cap and trade, not carbon tax. Don't be confused on this one. And the federal level has told us it's one or the other. Being out of the system, it's not an option. So the question I ask for everybody is, we stop doing carbon tax or cap and trade, where are we going to get the hundreds of millions of dollars that the economy is not going to have? And that money is necessary to have decent living conditions for everybody in this province. We are a wealthy province, and what we need to do is work together and be smart about solutions. And that's what we're all about.
Thank you. Helena.
Yes, well, we were really pleased to be able to raise the minimum wage to $14 an hour this January 1st, 2018. And if we are re-elected, we do intend to continue that steady progress and incremental improvements to $15 an hour next January 2019. I don't feel there's any need for any additional studies. There are many jurisdictions that have raised minimum wage to comparable levels, and what they found is that, in fact, it's good for business as well. Those employees have a loyalty to their employer. There's less staff turnover. There is, in fact, even the return of those funds to the economy. There's increased purchasing power, obviously, for those workers who are now earning that little bit extra. I think it really is something to realize that 30% of Ontarians actually make less than $30,000 per year. And we know that that gap between rich and poor is increasing, and that's why in our platform we've introduced so many other issues that address affordability. Things like free childcare, free prescription drugs for children, young adults 24 and under. So we're trying to address this from many different perspectives. So we feel that our economy is strong, unemployment is at the lowest rate that it's been in something like 17 years at 5.5%. The jobs are out there, and businesses are hiring people each and every day.
Thank you. Paul.
No, Conservative government would put a halt to the increase, the last dollar increase. We feel that we heard from chambers of commerce across this province, and we heard that they said that it was too much too fast. When you add on everything else that this government put on top of our small, medium, and large job creators over the last year, whether it is the carbon tax, whether it was increased environmental fees and levies, whether it's the increase in in hydro rates. It's too much for them to have accomplished, or too much for them to handle at one time. So we will delay, obviously, that the last dollar increase. We said, though, however, we will eliminate income taxes for the lowest income earners. It's interesting to hear the Liberals say that by increasing the minimum wage, you put more money in the pockets of people, and people go and spend money. And that's exactly what we feel. We feel that when you put more money in the pockets of our small business owners, when you put more money in the pockets of our hardworking taxpayers, they will go out there and spend it. And that's what a Conservative government wants to do, because Kingsley's quite right. You know, groceries are very expensive. But they're expensive because we put on a whole host of other taxes and levies that our small businesses and medium businesses and large job creators are now passing on to consumers. We have a massive debt in this province. We're the largest, the most in-debt sub-sovereign government in the world. We have higher taxes. We have a $12 billion debt, and life is harder for people. So we believe that you make better decisions when you balance your budget, when you put more money in taxpayers' pockets, and you do that differently by supporting small businesses and letting them get people back to work. It's actually disappointing to hear that 30% of our workforce is at minimum wage. That's not the type of province I want. I don't want to be talking about minimum wage jobs. I want to be talking about unleashing the full potential of the economy, because I want it to be the type of province that it was when you came here and when you came here, one that is full of hope and opportunity for everybody, boundless opportunity, and that's what we can create again.
Thank you. Jose, with this next question, we're going to start with you. Ontario's debt is the highest of any subnational government in the world. A significant portion of our government's annual expense is the cost to service that debt when interest rates are at an all-time low. The risk of interest rates increasing presents a huge annual cost increase potential. If you are elected, what would you want to see happen to Ontario budget planning regarding deficits, surpluses, and debt reduction? Would you support cutting back on established programs to achieve your goal?
Thanks for that question. You see, debt should be seen as a part of a continuum, right? Because it's related to your ability to pay, right? So if you own a house, for example, your ability to pay is much greater than if you rent a house. This is so obvious that we shouldn't even spend so much time on this. But the situation we have here is that we live in one of the best places in the planet. 1 million square kilometers in Ontario, less than 14 million people, and yet we don't seem to be able to make ends meet. And I think, to answer your question, what I would do if I got elected to be your representative in Queen's Park, I would ask very, very rough questions of the people that are running this province. Because the problem that we have is that we are asked once every X years, 4, 3, 2, depending on the type of government that gets created, whether we like one of us. And that's about it. We check a box. Never again we're asked what we want to do with our tax money. We don't have grown-up discussions because what's now in fashion is slogans and quick sound bites and try to get the attention of people with shiny bells and whistles. What I bring to the table is expertise. I've advised governments, presidents, ministers, and now I want to have your trust to represent you in Queen's Park so I can actually make a difference by listening to what you have to say. And they just told me 30 seconds out. So to answer the question, the key thing here is sometimes you have to look at what you own to see what you can afford. And Ontario is very, very wealthy. What we need to do is administer the province properly.
Thank you. Alina.
Well, I just want to remind everyone that we did balance the budget this year, this fiscal year, in March 2018-19. We did. Absolutely. And I'd like to remind Paul that we did reduce hydro rates by 25%. So that has made an impact. But in terms of the debt, yes, we acknowledge we're a large province, 14 million people, and we're obviously growing. People are flocking to this province because it's such a wonderful place to live. And we've made a deliberate choice to continue to invest, much as businesses do. Businesses, in order to expand, need to borrow. They need new tools. They need capital. They need to grow their business. And just in the same way, we need to grow our services to make sure that our population has what they need in terms of education and health care. And so this is exactly what we've done in our budget this year. We will have a deficit. I believe, in fact, the other parties have also, certainly the NDP and the PCs appear to be headed towards deficit. We have a plan to get back to balance, just as we did this year. We will get back to balance if we are re-elected in 2024-25. And in the meantime, we will take advantage of the low interest rates that exist to expand the services that people need in order for them to flourish and achieve their full potential.
I just will make a reminder that, if there's anybody who has comments during anybody speaking, to please just kind of hold it to themselves for the time being. That would be respectful. Thank you. Paul.
Well, specific to debt and deficit, yes, we have to bring our budget back into balance. We can't run $12 billion deficits ad nauseum. We have to bring it back into balance. You don't run your home that way, and the government of Ontario shouldn't run its budget that way. Helena talks about a reduction of hydro rates by 25%. Well, they did that by borrowing $19 billion to artificially bring the rate down after they increased it 150%. How the heck is that a success for you? When you go to get your bills and you look at it and you say, wow, great, they brought it down 25%. Wow, but it's already gone up 150%. There is a long way to go. This is a bunch of nonsense. This is the most important issue this province faces right now. Debt and deficit, taxes, and how we are going to pay for the services that people want going forward. The Liberals last year promised us a balanced budget. The reality was, the budget wasn't actually balanced. You borrowed $10 billion last year. You put it into into discretionary borrowing and hid it. So the budget actually wasn't balanced. It's, I think, on page 71 of the last year's budget. It wasn't balanced. You borrowed $10 billion. By 2021-22, a sizable portion of the debt is coming due, which will have to be renegotiated. And interest rates are going up in that at the same time. But moreover, they're telling us that they have a deficit. First they said it was balanced. Then they said it was $6 billion. The Auditor General tells us it's $12 billion. The Fiscal Accountability Office tells us it's $12 billion. They're not telling us the truth. And we have to have a government in place that is going to tell us the truth about the budget, the deficit, because if we don't bring this under control, you can forget increases on a whole host of services that are important to you. You can forget about tax increases. When we hit the doors, I'm sure you're all hearing about affordability. We will bring this budget back into balance because it's the right thing to do for the people of Ontario and for future generations.
We'll stop you there, Paul. Kingsley.
Thanks, Pat. Debt and deficits is important. For government debt and deficits is important for the middle class. That's for sure. Before I go further, I want to remind, just to add a supplementary on the minimum wage, chamber members and Board of Trade members, if you don't have minimum wage employees right now, raising the minimum wage of $15 does not affect your company. It only affects the people who are earning $14 an hour. Anyway, back to the deficits and surplus and debt. That's right. Government is like companies. And so just as any company, when they have to live within their means, they have to find wastage. And they have to find efficiency. And so like you, a government, an NDP government, would have to find where to waste this, and we've been saying all along that the Liberals have sat around for 15 years and haven't improved on quite a bit of things, and we're still stuck in this situation. But however, we don't want to go back to the previous other party that had government, because they They just want to find cuts. We're going to listen to the Auditor General of Ontario and when the Auditor General says that there is waste in this program, such as the public-private partnership, which wasted $8 billion, we're going to fix that. Or the computer system that pays for the Ontario Disability Support Program, that computer program also wasted millions of dollars. So that could be saved and then put into programs that are beneficial for Ontarians. I still have time, don't I? Thank you.
With that, time's up. Okay. Helena, this next question, we'll start with you. 77% of Ontario Chamber of Commerce members claim that the ability to recruit and retain talent is critical to their organizational competitiveness. The Ontario government is investing in various programs to expand skills and workforce development and apprenticeships. The programs include Good Jobs and Growth Plan, Ontario Apprenticeship Strategy, Career Ready Fund, and other post-secondary plans. If elected, what would you do to introduce such programs to Stouffville?
Well, thank you. And of course, our government has been absolutely dedicated to improving the education of our young people to ensure that they can get the jobs that are out there. And certainly this starts in high school. We're pushing science, technology, engineering, and math. And at some point, Paul, you're going to have to explain me how mathematically scrapping the carbon tax, as Mr. Ford wants to do, increasing services, decreasing taxes, and somehow balancing the budget actually works. So I look forward to your explanation for that. In terms of the programs that we are providing in terms of making sure skilled people hit the workforce, there are a number that are really important. The Graduated Apprenticeship Grant Program is one that gives incentives to employers to ensure that apprentices, when they reach a certain level of training, the employer gets an additional amount of funding to support that apprentice. And on completion of the apprenticeship, they actually get, when the apprentice achieves their certificate, they get an additional disbursement. So there's a real incentive to keep apprentices through the whole program and make sure that they emerge with their papers at the end of it. Of course, our OSAP increase has been an amazing success. We have had an additional 200,000 students take advantage of the new OSAP program that gives virtually free tuition to any student in a household of income of less than 90,000. And so they are getting the type of education they need for the jobs out there.
Thank you. Paul?
Well, thanks. When I was your federal member of Parliament, one of the things that we worked very hard was to come up with a labour market agreement with the province of Ontario, and in fact all of the provinces across the country. And what we said that we wanted to do was increase funding for apprenticeships so that they could find the jobs and that our employers could access apprentices for those jobs. We brought in tax cuts so that our apprentices could write off their tools and so on and so forth. But we also have to unleash the education system a bit, right? As a federal member of Parliament, nothing frustrated me more than when I would hear from local businesses who said that they had to bring people in because our colleges weren't graduating people in the right courses. Sheridan College was one in particular. They had we were bringing in people for the video game industry to create programming for the video game industry, jobs that started at $100,000 a year. They begged us to help them get the province of Ontario to actually increase the amount of spaces. 10 years they had waited from the province of Ontario to increase the amount of spaces available, and the province had turned them down. But it goes further than that, because when we talk about manufacturing, they've closed the schools to educate the people, the mold technicians who take the molds and help us create the products that we're selling. So when we talk about losing jobs in the manufacturing industry, you're not going to bring in new jobs in the manufacturing industry when you close down the schools that teach people how to create the very tools that we need manufacturing. When you talk about balancing budget and cutting taxes, well, Helena, look, I'll say this. I was part of a government that reduced taxes to the lowest level in 50 years. We increased transfers to your government for health care at 6% a year. Unfortunately, you only lose 2.9% of it. And we balanced the budget, and we also brought in the largest infrastructure program in the history of Canada and left this economy in great shape. It can be done, and I reference exactly what you said. When you put more money in people's pockets, the economy grows, and our province will do better, and that's exactly what we will do. We will unleash the opportunity and the potential of this province like it hasn't been under 15 years of your government.
Thank you, Paul. Kingsley.
Thanks, Pat. It's nice for the previous speakers to talk about a previous government, but that previous government went down in defeat 3 years ago, so we're talking about a brand new world right now. It's 2018. But anyway, about recruitment, I think that's what Chamber of Commerce or people were asking. Boys and girls need to learn how to code. I never did. Boys and girls need to learn science, technology, engineering, and math, STEM. I didn't know that acronym when I was younger.